All right, hey everybody. So I've tried to make this video a couple of times, and each one is longer than the next. So I'm going to apologize. It's going to be a little bit longer, but Will Stonier had asked me to comment about, to talk about my lessons with Larry McKenna, and just maybe reflect on it and talk like, how did Larry teach, his approach to teaching and all that. So at this point, if you don't know who Larry McKenna is, please stop watching my video and look up as many YouTube videos on Larry playing. There are a lot of them, as you can, and immerse yourself in the beauty that is Larry McKenna and his music. In my mind, he was the quintessential saxophone player. Just never played a wrong note. His improvisation was absolutely beautiful. And I loved his sound. I loved his feel. I loved everything about the man. Like, he was just phenomenal as a player and even better as a person. So I really, when I say I was honored to study with him, I really was. I mean, not only honored, I was blessed. Like, really, the guy just enhanced my life, especially at a point where I was ready for what he was teaching, and it just made sense. Now, that being said, going back over his material now, because Will asks, and I pull out my lesson books and all that stuff, and I'm just looking, I'm like, wow, there's all of this stuff that Larry gave me. So anyway, let me talk about what my lessons with Larry weren't. These things never happened in my lessons. My lessons were not saxophone lessons, where like you walk in and you have a saxophone teacher and they're saxophone specific, where you're talking about embouchure and tonguing and the specifics of saxophone playing, like hand position and breathing and vibrato and etude books and close and furling and you name it. What you would normally associate with a saxophone lesson. My lessons with Larry, none of that. None of it. So what were my lessons? Well, I met him in the fall semester of 1988 at Temple University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I was a jazz saxophone major. I went in as a performance major to Temple. I quickly switched to music ed after the first year. But I didn't know what to expect. I just had a lesson scheduled with Larry, so I show up with my manuscript book, my saxophone, and he's there, and we say hi. He introduces himself. I introduce myself. And he asks that I bring my manuscript book. Well, I did, because I was told I needed a manuscript book. So I brought my manuscript book. And he's sitting there. His saxophone is out, but it's on top of the piano. A grand piano in one of the, wasn't a practice room, but his classroom. And he didn't play saxophone at all. He played piano. I mean, in all the lessons that I had with him, he very rarely played saxophone. So I handed him my manuscript book in this first lesson. He pulls out his mechanical pencil, sits in a chair, crosses his legs, which you probably can't see, but he does this like little gentle cross of the legs, and sits there with the manuscript book and starts writing. I sat silent for about 5 minutes as I listened to Larry's pencil scratching on the manuscript book. He never erased, by the way. At least very rarely. I mean, I can remember him erasing like maybe 4 or 5 times total in all the lessons that I had with him. So after about 5 or 6 minutes, and this one was probably about less than 5 minutes, he hands me this whole page here. This was a solo to All the Things You Are that he wrote out. And he said, okay, hey, now play this. And he comped at the piano. So like I had to sight read. And for whatever reason, like, I mean, his manuscript for me was very easy to read. I guess certain people would think that that's not very neat, but to me, it's absolutely beautiful. Just like his playing, it made sense to look at. So I've actually done a short. I've played this solo on my YouTube, and you can find it and actually read along with the solo. But I had never, this was the first thing that I played for Larry. And then, so like, this is what it was. I was already blown away by that. I'd never played a diminished scale. He had me there. He throws that diminished line in there. I mean, it sounds cliche, but in the mind of an 18-year-old, I was like, what is that? I love that. I need to learn what that is. Yeah, and he had me there too. That one. And that one. And then he gives me the honeysuckle rose line. And then check this out. He gives me an augmented triad. So it's like years of learning in this one solo. So I play it. And I'm like, I want to play it again. And, you know, he explains a couple of things to me about the solo. And then I was off and running. Like, I left. He didn't give me an assignment. He gave me that solo. That was it. He didn't tell me to put everything in all 12 keys. He didn't say anything. He might have said, you know, hey, learn the melody. Maybe. I don't even remember if he said anything like that. But from my study with John Cooper in high school, and I talked about John on other videos, and again, thanks, John, killing educator. I mean, the guy's just amazing. But I had been putting things in all 12 keys. We were extrapolating like little lines of Charlie Parker, like, for example, from the Omnibook. Like that line. So we would take that line and put it in all 12 keys. So I was used to taking like little snippets, little lines out of a solo and putting them all 12 keys. So for me, this was like a gold mine. I'm looking at this. I'm like, oh man, there is so much in this solo that I'm going to take and put in all 12 keys. Larry didn't tell me to do that. I think he just assumed that I would do that. But we never talked about it. we never talked about like, hey, do these lines in all 12 keys. It just wasn't something we did or that he told me. It was just, he would write out a solo. He would give me a tune, write out a solo, and that was the lesson. That was it. We never talked saxophone. The only time I can remember talking saxophone was, you know, I got curious because it's Larry and he sounds so beautiful. I'm like, Larry, what mouthpiece are you playing? Like I knew it was an Auto Link hard rubber, but I just had to hear him say it. Yeah, you know, it's an old Auto Link hard rubber. I can't even remember what size, it 5 or a 6. I don't know. And then playing just an old stock metal ligature, 2-screw ligature. And Larry, what size, what reeds are you using? He pulls out orange box Ricos. Yeah, they're the cheapest, you know, they work. I mean, Larry's so humble. And he's playing like this beautiful, I don't know if it's an SBA or a balanced action. It was an old Selmer. It wasn't a Mark VI. And I do remember he had a silver Mark VI alto. He would take it out every once in a while. He sounded just like Charlie Parker. I mean, it was beautiful. I mean, he was still Larry McKenna, but that got stolen. I think that was stolen out of his car at some point, but a beautiful horn. Anyway, so that was like the first year was nothing but solos that he would write out. And then eventually he would just write the tunes and then I would play over them using certain devices. And he would not write full solos out, but like give me devices for certain parts of the tune. Like for instance, we did Stardust and he has the melody written here. But when I get to that flat 7 dominant with a sharp 11, so Stardust starts on the 4 chord. Larry, so there's Stardust, all written out in the key of E flat. But then on the next page, look what he did. He wrote this line out for bars 3 and 4, and it goes on a little bit more. But that was, so like he wanted to make sure that I understood, okay, this is the kind of sound that you're going to do on this flat 7 dominant chord with a sharp 11. So here's the beginning. And then I'll insert the line right here. Do that last part again. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's like, it's just beautiful. So, you know, that's where I was maybe like the second year. I was playing some of his stuff, and then he wanted to make sure that I would know the right notes to play over certain chords that I guess he figured he'd heard people scuffle on that were my age. Like, he wanted to make sure I knew how to solo over that flat 7 dominant chord. So he would give me this beautiful bebop language. And then later on, he would write out a tune for me. Like, this is kind of the progression. He'd write out a melody, and then I would have to transcribe the chords as he played in the lesson. So, like, he would play them on piano. So I would sit there with my pencil after he wrote the melody out, and there were no chords, and I'd have to figure the chords out in real time. So, like, just for example, like Girl from Ipanema. Okay, so like I would be writing, oh, okay, 1 major 7, I get it, F major 7, and then, so if I was stuck, he would give me the kind of little sideways tilt of the head and go, or, and I knew it was like a signal. Oh, that line means a 2 dominant chord. I get it. So like this brilliant teaching, but it was the progression of I needed to learn a vocabulary. So he wrote the solo so I could learn the vocabulary in the beginning. Now I knew a little bit of the vocabulary. He expanded the vocabulary in that second and third year so that I would understand on difficult chord progressions what I could do, and like he would give me the right information. And then ultimately, he wanted me to be able to know that vocabulary backwards, meaning the vocabulary dictated the chord progression or dictated the chord. So this sound, I always hear when it's a 2 dominant chord. Like, for example, A Train. I just hear that sound because that's what Larry taught me. And it's not like it's a Larry sound. It's just, that's like jazz vernacular. So anyway, so that was kind of the lessons with Larry. Again, it wasn't any type of technical stuff. It wasn't anything saxophone-ish. That's why he had a lot of people study with him that were not saxophone players. They were just jazz musicians, because he was giving lessons in jazz improvisation, jazz theory, jazz harmony, form, all of that. And he was doing it in such a gentle, kind, but brilliant way. I mean, it's really brilliant when you look back at it. When I look back at it, it's just brilliant. He used these tunes and he taught standard progressions out of them, standard sounds that would dictate what the progression was. And then from there, you're able to manipulate all of these sounds. And in the meantime, he's teaching vocabulary, like bebop, jazz vocabulary. So it was just brilliant. But it was not, you know, long tones, vibrato studies, 5 things this week to do. It literally was, I had to extrapolate what to do out of the lesson. He just assumed that I would understand. And I did. For whatever reason, I was blessed to be able to understand. And it was all because of John Cooper. But I was ready for that. I was like, yes, this is what I need to do. I need to take your stuff and put it in every key. And that's what I did. I mean, I would sit in the practice room and just shed for hours and hours and hours, like 2 5 licks that Larry would give me, like this thing. I would take that and put that in every key. So anyway, lessons with Larry were absolutely incredible. I miss that man so much. And the world of jazz misses him because he was a singularly beautiful voice. When I tell you he never played a wrong note, he never played a wrong note. And I'll end with this one kind of funny Larry story. And he said it in so much humility, but you know, being jazz musicians at that point, and young, we all were like, Larry, we would sit around and like talk to Larry because he was so sweet. He would just sit around and talk to people, especially students. He loved the students. But we would ask him like, Larry, we want to be able to play outside the changes, you know, like play stuff that sounds cool. You know, Larry, how do you play out? And Larry, in all of his humility, was like, well, I don't know. I've really worked all of my life trying to play the right notes. It's perfect. And it totally pictures Larry. And he wasn't putting anybody down. That's just who he was. He loved playing the beautiful notes. For him, these beautiful notes were all like the right notes. So lessons with Larry were a joy. He was unlike any teacher I ever had. And he, for whatever reason, was able to get his point across without ever having to tell you what to do. It really is a gift. It was a gift. Brilliant teacher, brilliant player, but an even better person. All right, so if anybody watches this that actually studied with Larry, please share your Larry stories, because I love to hear them. I love to think about my time with him. I love getting together and talking about him with people that studied with him and knew him, because there's always stories, Larry stories, and they're always funny. He had a great sense of humor too, like this dry sense of humor. But yeah, please share them in the comments if you were a student of Larry or have any Larry stories. All right, so there you go. That was my time with Larry. All right, see you soon.